Hi, welcome back to another week. I'm so excited. Another new person who I have reached out to ask to be on today, who has graciously said yes. So I want to introduce you to Lisa Vawter, a mom of two, outdoors lover, and chiropractor with a passion for serving women in the motherhood transition from preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. Her practice is Lisa Vawter Chiropractic, and it's a holistic, healing, and inclusive space for people to be heard and find empowerment on their journey. She has a master's in nutrition, is certified in Webster Technique, spinning babies, birth fit, and numerous other continuing education courses for pregnancy and postpartum. This fall, she's excited to begin a research study at the local hospital, looking for a protocol for breech presentation using complementary and alternative medical approaches. She truly loves using movement as medicine and collaborating with other providers in the birth world to get the patients what the help that they need. And everybody, please welcome Dr. Vawter. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. I'm just thrilled to be able to do this with you.
I am so excited. I am so excited to talk about spinning babies.
Oh man,
I obviously I did Google it after I said that, but I'm sure there are a number of people who are like, what the heck is that? But we will get into that. First, I just wanted to say, obviously, I always like to start the show by asking people how we know each other. Of course, I DM'd you, so I don't want to have you be like, I don't know you. You just asked me to come on, but
yeah, but I love that. And that's like the beauty of, social media and feeling like we kind of already know each other a little bit via the, info that you put out. And
yeah,
that's the name of the game.
I think so, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to say, it's been something nice for me with the social media, feeling more like the more yeses I get, the more I ask of people to come and share their energy, their intellectual labor, because I know a lot of people, I keep getting messages of like, oh my gosh, you had so and so on, and I've been wondering that, or I was curious about that, or whatever. And it's like, and there, so I'm so excited to share your knowledge and expertise with everybody. How did you decide to get into chiropractic?
Oh, you know what? That's a funny, there's a long story. And I'll try to be really concise. So growing up, I always thought I would be a physician, like in a white coat in the hospital. My mom was a nurse for a long, long time. My stepdad is a surgeon. And, that's just kind of maybe as a young kid, what I thought was a very respectful job, right?
Yes, sure. Of course.
And then as you grew up, you start to, you go to high school, you're like, oh my gosh, biology is hard. Chemistry is even harder. You go to college and you're like, oh my gosh, these prereqs, what the heck? So I did the pre-med route. I majored in nutrition and dietetics because I was like, if med school doesn't work out, what would I do with a biology degree? Like,
absolutely.
I don't know. So nutrition just seemed a little bit more tangible career-wise. And I applied to med school, right? Like, senior year out of college, and I got into DO school, and I was like, I kind of want to be an MD. And so I was like, I'll just go to grad school for a little bit, reapply, hopefully get into medical school after that. And I just never finished the second round of applications. So I got my master's in nutrition. And I kind of in that space, from 22 to 24, 25, realized like to be a doctor is like a decade more journey. And at that point, I was kind of like, I had a great job. I was dating someone, and I was like, this really is like, if I'm not exuberant about this process, then I should probably take a pause, work for a little bit, see if that's, if I had gone to the DO school right out of college, I would probably be a DO,
Sure.
But I didn't. And, with all of my education in nutrition, I kind of realized like the holistic food as medicine, lifestyle management of health and wellness was really what I vibed with more than like writing a prescription. you know. And when you get into, unfortunately, and this is just obviously my outside looking in with, you know, a lot of education, like once you get into the system, I mean, everybody becomes a doctor to help somebody, right? And to be a servant of sorts. But once you get into the system, things aren't that it's not that easy. And you know, and so unfortunately, like, you know, doctors have time constraints, and so I didn't go in that direction ultimately. So this is about chiropractic. I worked for 6 years in a great job. I did whatever I wanted. I made great money. I didn't have any debt, you know, and then I was injured running. And I, you know, I got an x-ray, got an MRI, got a cortisone shot, went the whole like Western med side of it. And really the only thing that ultimately helped me figure out what was going on with this running injury was seeing a chiropractor. And she's a strength and conditioning coach, and she's awesome. And so I would go in, you know, each month and pick her brain and ask her a million questions. And finally one day she was like, Lisa, just go look at the school. Just go tour, just go, you're going to love it. And so I did. I made an appointment to go tour at Cleveland in Overland Park. And I applied the next day, and I like got accepted and enrolled like 6 weeks later, and my whole lifestyle just like turned on its head.
Wow. How about that for a turnover?
Yeah. And so that was May of 2016. And I graduated August of 2019, started my practice in, you know, October, November of 2019. And that's kind of where it all started.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how I became a chiropractor.
Yeah. And that's so wonderful to hear that you were able, when you had that injury and things didn't really seem to be progressing as you'd like. Were you running, like, were you training for something, or you just ran for health, or?
I've always been a runner. And so I had the injury. So I think the injury kind of started years before, when I was in grad school, and I was researching at the hospital and taking class and working a job and trying to fit in exercise. And so I would just, you know, I literally would have like 35 minutes to get a workout in, and I would go run for 30 of those minutes as fast and as hard as I could, and come back and take a shower and get back out the door. Well, you know, like all of those other lifestyle factors, like I wasn't sleeping very much. I wasn't eating as well as I probably could. I was stressed to the max. And then on top of that, exercise was really my only outlet. And so I was just going really hard, and my tissues were like, nope, sorry.
Hey, we need you to shut it down. It's interesting how the body lets us know when the things that we are doing too much of or not enough of, like taking care of ourselves or overdoing it in certain ways. And eventually the body's just like, ma'am, take a seat, take a couple seats.
Take a rest. So then, you know, I feel like life slowed down a little bit. My exercise kind of balanced out a little bit, and then it just kind of cropped back up. So I probably had been seeing her going on 2 years before she was like, Lisa, you just gotta like.
That's so funny. Just do it. Just like,
just go look. Yeah.
You're very interested in this. Go make that happen.
Yeah.
I love that.
It was perfect. And she was right. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so you're talking kind of about, you had mentioned like the holistic approach to things and food as fuel. How does that kind of help you in working with some of your clients? Especially, I don't want to ask you too many questions, but I have so many that I want to ask about this.
I know.
Especially with people who've just given birth, there is still this bounce back culture, but we're also trying to nourish our bodies. Some of us are chest feeding human babies. Like, how does that all play into your practice? And I, again, apologize that I just asked you like 3 questions in one.
No, it's great, because it's all just gonna snowball, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's the foundation. I mean, on my intake, I have a huge long intake that asks about stress and nutrition and like previous health history and all these other things, right? Because the healing postpartum is your body is going to heal. And if you don't fuel the healing with food, it's just going to take a lot longer. I mean, your body will steal components of what it needs from other tissues. And if you are also lactating, that is like stealing, not stealing, you are, giving life to another human.
Sure.
And so, it's just, it's the foundation. It's the ultimate piece of the puzzle. I can do body work all day long and you will still be in pain if your body doesn't have the tools that it needs to rebuild the muscle tissue, to heal the placenta wound, to help make hormones, to help you regulate the rest of your body. And so that's like the first question that I ask a mom when I see them postpartum. And really it's the first question that I ask most patients. It's like, we're going to sit here and talk for the first 15 minutes of this appointment. And a lot of it is going to be about lifestyle. And so how are you sleeping? How are you eating? What's your stress level like? Like sleep, food, and stress are huge players in the healing, managing pain equation. And so it would be negligent to not address it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, and then making simple suggestions, like, do you eat enough protein? And a lot of people will like look me in the eye and be like, no, I know I'm not.
No. Yeah.
Are you eating healthy fats? No. Okay. How can we make this easier for you? How can we get those on board? Because that's going to be your homework. I give all of my patients like physical homework, like rehab exercises, and like another component of their lifestyle homework, because it's super important. And if I want the trajectory of their healing to be efficient, then I need those factors to play into it as well,
Absolutely. I that's so wonderful to hear, and thinking about that. I know we talk a lot about kind of in the art of holding with postnatal women. A lot of times, women will speak in hyperbole, like, I haven't showered in 3 weeks, or I haven't eaten in 2 days. And it's like, and that obviously is a signal to us, like, that things are not going well. And being able to say, okay, but I want you to let me know, like, what was the last thing that you ate? And it will be like a handful of popcorn, or the leftover from my toddler's Uncrustable sandwich. And so it's like, okay, so you've got sugar, peanut butter, a little bit of carb. Right. So right. And it's figuring out that way to be really intentional about balancing out everything. But of course, in trying to figure that out, making that into your lifestyle with a new tiny human on board while you're also trying to recover, it is absolutely a lot. So it's wonderful that they have people like you who could be asking those questions that some of us really genuinely, when you're in the throes of things, you just don't even think about it. Like, I'm doing enough that I woke up today. So
oh yeah. Well, and for the homework part of what happens in my office is like, what I tell all of my patients is, I want this to be tangible. I don't want this to be something that we talk about and that you don't translate into a reality, in your life. So, if I give you an exercise homework and you never do it, I need you to tell me that. And I'm not like personally attached to it. I will not be offended. This is not, I'm not the one in pain. I just want to make sure that we can integrate it into your life, that you like doing it, that you've done it at least a couple times, because a couple times is better than nothing,
Right.
And really the basis of the nutrition stuff that I talk about in my office. And I will recommend a supplement here and there if I think like you're having muscle cramps, maybe you need some more magnesium and some more electrolytes on board,
Sure.
or, whatever. We could, go down a rabbit hole with that. But mostly my recommendation starts with just like, have a balanced plate, have all three food groups, protein, carbs, and fat at each meal. If you can, snacks, 2 out of the 3. And that is like, if that's the big, like, that needs to happen. That needs to happen. And so if that means like grabbing the tortilla chips to add into your, chicken and avocado, if you're like literally having snackos for dinner, that's fine with me. But, if you're having apples and cheese, like, grab the peanut butter so that you can have fat and carb and protein, So
yeah.
So that's kind of how I dabble in, like, bring in my nutrition, because it is simple, but it's not easy. And, and I know some people, they come in, they're like, well, I didn't come in for a talk about my diet. It's like, well, you did, kind of, because you picked my office.
I was going to say, your presence in my office implies that you did.
Right. Yeah. Or, and so we, when we talk about stress too, and I have a couple therapists that are patients, and, I talk a lot about building a toolbox of tools to pull out when you start to feel your pain, or you start to feel this thing coming back on. Do the exercises that we talked about. Try to help yourself first. We just, hopefully by the end of our care plan, you have a dozen tools that you can use. And they're like, this sounds like what I say to my clients too, because we talk about toolboxes and building toolboxes and pulling out the tools. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
I love that.
That's so funny. It's like that expression, physician, heal thyself, which I am not a physician, but there have been times where I'm like, wait, I'm a therapist. Why am I responding this way? Let's take a second. Let's think about what else I could do. I know how to do this. Let me pull from my toolbox.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. And so with all of that background, what made you want to specialize in perinatal and put your focus there?
It just kind of happened.
Sure.
So just, personal experience. So I met my husband the first day of school, and we got married the next year. And then at the end of my second year of chiropractic school, I was pregnant and had my oldest. She'll be 4 in November, Charlotte. And so I was pregnant in school, and then, postpartum for just a little bit at the end of school. And so going through, I was taking, the pediatrics courses, and I was taking the, development across the lifespan classes and neurology and all of, like, I was getting so much, like, clinical information, and also taking seminars, and also, like, getting certified in Webster. And in chiropractic school, you are a patient in the student clinic. So we, as students, we work on each other.
Yes.
And then after student clinic, you graduate to treat patients in the outpatient clinic, where the public can come in and get cared for. And so when I was pregnant, one of my classmates, I would go see her every week, just an appointment in the student clinic. And she had 2 kids, and she was also pregnant at the time. And so we went back and forth. I was her patient, she was my patient. And so I was getting adjusted every week, just because I was in the building, right? Like, I wouldn't have sought that out for myself if I was not a chiropractic student. I probably would have gotten adjusted like once a month by the girl that I had been seeing beforehand, but it was really convenient. And so, then I was also going to my OB and getting check-ins with her and having really great conversation and dialogue with her. And then it was all, like, really hard. Like, I felt great during pregnancy, and I recovered well postpartum, and feeding was hard. And, like, it was the very end of it was right after Thanksgiving. It was the end of November. It was cold. I didn't want to get outside. Life with an infant is just hard.
Mm.
And so as I was, in my little bubble of school, I'm like, I had all these resources. I had the most resources of anybody, of all of my friends, and it was still not easy. And so I'm like, there's a gap here, especially in musculoskeletal care, especially for moms that are pregnant and very uncomfortable and they have debilitating sciatic pain, or their low back constantly hurts, or
Mm.
they're chasing a toddler around and this is their second pregnancy or their third pregnancy. And it's like, it just is harder.
Mm.
And then postpartum, getting back to activity, like I had all of these tools and I still didn't want to exercise for like 16 weeks. Like it really opened my eyes. So my personal experience opened my eyes to this, like, how do I fill this gap? How do I become the person that I needed? How do I do these things with my particular background? I'm like perfectly poised to do it. And so that kind of really made it easy for me upon graduation to be like, I just want to treat moms and babies, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I send me all your pregnant friends. Let me help you do postpartum return to movement safely.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and so that's kind of how I carved my niche. And I'm so thankful, that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I gotta tell you, I got a little choked up just then when you said, because I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody sitting in your same metaphorical, in your Zoom chair, right,
Right.
on this show, who have said, I became the person I needed. It's because of the hardships that we experience through fertility, through pregnancy, through postpartum, through all of this parenting, motherhood, everything journey,
Yeah.
and the struggles that we've had. And we're like, I refuse to sit by and let more people not have access to some sort of help. And it's a beautiful, beautiful space to be like, and here I go. And I'm going to take care of that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it, I mean, I don't know. I obviously, like, helping one person is the best,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I
Mm-hmm.
still obviously, and I'm sure you do too, doesn't matter how many years of practice I'm in, I
Sure.
still have imposter syndrome. I still have like that visit where they come in and they walk out and you're like, I think I helped them. Like,
Yeah.
I think that went okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then they come back the next week and they're like, I felt better than I've ever felt, for, or
Yeah.
at least for the last month or whatever,
Right.
or I will just, because there's that transition where I've been seeing a mom. My treatment schedule with a pregnant person is just along their provider schedule, right? So like every 4 weeks and then every other week and then once a week and then they deliver the baby, and I
Right.
sometimes, like, I see them for their appointment and then they just don't, they don't come back because they have a baby now. So I
Right.
usually send a text to be like, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm here as a resource. If you need anything, shoot me a text or whatever. And, my patients are always like, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to send you a picture or whatever. And,
Yeah.
and then I offer to do the first visit postpartum at their house, like to see my patients. Like,
Hey.
I know. As I am busier and busier now lately, I'm having to like narrow down the day that I do it, but it it just is one of those things where I want to impress upon my patients the importance of like staying home. Like, please don't get out the first 2 weeks besides whatever you have to do for, doctor's visits and stuff. But like,
Right.
you need to be touched postpartum, like you need to be touched, and I will come to you, and those sorts of messages that I try to say to my patients, like in Thailand, and there's a book that I love. It's called The Fourth Trimester by Kimberly Johnson. She has like a litany in the beginning of her book about all of the different cultural traditions surrounding birth and
Mhm.
the fourth trimester
Mhm.
postpartum, with, the mommy baby dyad and family and support and all of that stuff. And so I say to my patients all the time, I'm like, listen, in Thailand, new moms get a hot stone massage in their bed for the first 10 days postpartum.
Yeah. Wow. I
So,
live in Thailand.
right? So and that sounds so luxurious, right? Like that sounds like living in the lap of luxury. And that's what everybody gets. That's what they do. And, so I say to my patients, until we're doing that, until you have that sort of support, that then we're below the standard, right? Like then we're just really not great at celebrating that like sacred. It's just such a sacred rite of passage that in our culture, we just kind of sweep it under the rug.
Absolutely.
It's like this portal of evolution of two whole humans, right? And you might get touched as a mom, like by your spouse, maybe a hug from family or whoever you have come into your home, but it's not like a deep, compressive touch that's so healing, and I don't even necessarily adjust a mom postpartum, right? Like if there's a C-section scar, we're not getting her on her belly,
Sure.
a gentle, like compressive, sustained contact is so therapeutic,
Yeah. Yes.
And so doing that is like my biggest joy.
It is. And I mean, of course, yes, a hot stone massage would be luxurious. I just, it's just that focus though, more than the massage itself is the energy and the emphasis on the mom. I've had some friends who've had babies recently, and I fully just stopped asking people about the baby. Like I don't want to seem disinterested in the baby, but if there's something wrong with your baby, you're going to let me know. You're going to tell me. And I don't want to say, I don't care about that baby. I don't care about that baby. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, how are you doing? How are you? And like, because I live here in Kansas City, and none of my friends who I've known for very long, you and I are obviously newest best friends. It's wonderful. But like, generally speaking, my friends, they're not here. So I can't hop over and bring them a hot dish or come and rub their shoulders or do anything like that. And so for me, it's just like, I'm just asking about them, and I'm being really intentional about that. Because like I said, if there's something wrong or cute or wonderful or something about your baby, you'll let me know. But I just want to know how you're doing. And we do, like you said, the culture of kind of sweeping it under the rug is pretty pervasive here in the United States, of like, we do carry that pregnant person for so long, and then they pop at the baby and it's baby, 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 baby. And women aren't seen by their providers again till 6 weeks. And then after that, I'll see you at your next annual your annual exam. I mean, it's a wild space to be in. And so it's beautiful to hear that there are cultures that continue to celebrate the recovery that it takes to pop a human out.
Yeah. And like in Mexico, they do, or Central America, I guess I can't say specifically Mexico, at 40 days postpartum, mom and baby take like an herbal bath with rose petals to celebrate like, the first 40 days of life together. And I just like that, even a simple thing, like take a bath with your baby and maybe light a candle, put on some soft music, and then like have your partner come take the baby after 5 minutes so you can stay in the bath, which obviously if you have stitches, you have to like make sure that,
of course,
we're mostly healed. We don't want to do anything too early, but like that concept of relaxation and having it be a little ceremonial is like blows people's minds sometimes, where I'm like, you can like lotion yourself for a couple extra minutes on your belly and, close that womb space, and that energy that is like, you can honor it in that way. And people just don't, I mean, I don't know. those sorts of conversations I love to have. I love to present like some alternative stuff, because a lot of my patients come from OB offices. They're, they're 36 weeks in their breech and they're desperate, or, they have this crazy sciatic pain and one of their friends like suggested going to see a chiropractor, but they would never come into my office otherwise. They're just desperate. And so, after, I kind of like read the room a little bit, to see like where I want to meet this person where they're at. I don't want to scare them,
of course,
but having those conversations that like nobody else is having.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting. So when I was pregnant with my firstborn, I had my sciatic and piriformis. I almost got referred to physical therapy. Never once did anybody mention chiropractic in my OB's office. Wish they would have, which is wild because I have two very good friends, one when I lived in Indianapolis and one when I lived in Dallas, who are both doctors of chiropractic. And I don't know why I didn't think like, hey, I've had really good experiences with them. But anyway, and then with this last pregnancy, my second born, I did go to a physical therapist, made it much, much worse. That's how bad it was. And again, I'm like, man, why didn't I know Dr. Vawter? That would have been amazing, because you're right. And of course, kind of the cure, and I'm using air quotes for those who are not on the YouTube, but the cure for it is just giving birth to the baby. But in those weeks of sitting in that pain, it's like that light at the end of the tunnel is a pinprick, if that. And so to be able to be in a space where you can find that healing and find some sort of an alternative to just sitting in the discomfort. And now I want to say a big trigger warning really quickly, in case anybody has seen the show. Do you watch Game of Thrones at all?
No.
Okay. Have you heard what happens in the House of the Dragon, the new prequel to Game of Thrones?
I have only heard that it is graphic and really triggering. But no, I don't know.
So I'm not going to talk about it because it was aggressively triggering to me there, but for the grace of God go I, however many years ago, this metaphorical, not real places. And so it was really triggering for me. Again, I if y'all want to Google, trigger warning. I literally did a podcast episode about it. Like, they should have put something at the beginning.
And I've seen on Instagram a couple people say the same thing. Like, what the heck? How come there wasn't? Yeah. But I don't know. The content I don't know, and I haven't looked.
So I kind of I wish that somebody could have been like, choose your own adventure. If you have a history of pregnancy trauma, choose option B. We'll just give you the rundown of the overarching idea of what happened. If you have no issues and feel like you'd be happy to watch a really traumatic birth scene, please choose option A and watch the rest of the show. I still, even talking about it now, but I was having intrusive thoughts daily throughout the days for weeks after. I still haven't been able to watch the second episode because I can't get myself back into that space. And I've been watching Game of Thrones forever, but I wanted to just mention that in case you were aware of it, or you're familiar that it had happened, people who have had it. It's interesting because that's another option too. You're talking about breech babies, which is what happened in the Throne Games episode. Again, I'm going to stop talking about that, but you're talking about that. And what an interesting thing, because I don't know if people are aware that chiropractic is a potential intervention for a breech baby.
It is. And, I want to make it clear just right off the bat that my scope of practice as a chiropractor is to the mother, right? Like,
yes.
I can't address the baby.
Yes.
So my, what I'm addressing is balancing, muscles and ligaments that are attached to the pelvis.
Yes.
Doing an adjustment to the pelvis if it's needed. Most of the time it's needed. The sacrum moves, like, it can get out of the way. And I'm using this with my fingers or my hands. This is a pelvis and this is a sacrum. Right. So the SI joint back here, the sacrum lifts up and out of the way, like 2 centimeters to make make
Yeah.
room for the head of the baby, right? So if this SI joint, which I'm using with my thumb and my fingers, is restricted and not moving, and the sacrum can't clear it, then that's a BFD, right? Like we need to make sure that the glutes that attach to, the backside of the sacrum and, and even the hamstrings that come up and pull on the sits bone and your piriformis it's all really important that stuff is at least released, right? Like a little bit of pin and stretch in the glutes or some ischemic compression, like that stuff can go a long way, and even if I just needed to have a phone call with someone that was having a lot of, if this is a true story, I had a gal walk down, there's a pelvic health physical therapist down the hallway, and then I have Mika across the hallway from me.
Yes.
Sent on counseling, and then me. So there's a really nice perinatal group here, and the pelvic floor PT walked a gal down to my office. I was free. She's a physician. She's an ER doctor. She has a breech baby, and I said, I have 15 minutes. Just sit on the couch. Let's talk. And so I didn't touch her. We just sat there, and I gave her a list of tools to help, like, stretch her glutes and, roll on a tennis ball and, work through some of that stuff. And, I gave her a long list of things to do, and it was like a Thursday or a Friday. And I followed up with her on the next Monday saying like, hey, how are you doing? Do you want to come in for a real appointment or like, an initial exam? And she was like, well, the baby flipped. And I was like, gosh darn it, that's so cool.
So cool.
Yeah. And so obviously the chiropractic adjustment is what makes me a chiropractor. That's what distinguishes me from, a massage therapist or a pelvic floor PT or any kind of body worker. But it's not the only tool. I don't just singly use the adjustment, right? Like my clinical toolbox is wide, and I don't always adjust everyone, like there are some people that are scared, if you're pregnant and you're feeling vulnerable and you're in a new office and you don't want to be there, you're in a ton of pain and the adjustment is like something that's not on the table. Fine. That's fine. I have so many other things we can do. And so, yeah, for breech, it's like, the uterus is a muscle, and so it's a smooth muscle, and there's a bunch of things attached to it. Like the round ligament attaches at the top third of the uterus, and it's two cords that attach down to your pubic bone and into your labia majora, and it's the only ligament in the body that has, well, one of the only, I don't want to misspeak, but has smooth muscle inside of the ligament. And so when you're in labor and you have a contraction, those ligaments pull down on the top part of the uterus to push the baby out.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that those ligaments are balanced, right? Like if one side is cinched down and the other side is free, well, baby was going to hang out over here a little bit more. And so if we can balance those out and make the uterus open as much as it can be, or optimize all the space in your abdomen, then that's what we should do. If you're a CrossFitter or you loved that form of high intensity exercise, all through pregnancy, chances are your rectus and your obliques are tight, like probably still ripped, and so releasing some of those muscles in the front is super important because it directly affects the space that the uterus has to like do its thing. And so and then obviously our culture just sits a lot, and so the uterus, it's a balloon up top and then it comes down into like a funnel. And so, if you sit cross-legged, that most repetitive pattern that you go into, say you always cross your left over your right, the muscle is going to feel that little twist, and babies babies feel all of this stuff. Babies are so smart in utero, like
Yeah.
if the cervix is a little bit twisted, that might not be a safe way for them to come out. And so they'll keep their booty down there, and and so just, just like having those conversations to say like, hey, what do you do over and over and over and over and over and over again in your day that you don't realize? Is your office chair a position such that like every time you slide into your chair, it's to the right? Or, when you make your coffee, are you always leaning onto your left hip or whatever, and a lot of the times
Yes.
patients will come back and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I was doing this. I sat this way my whole workday and
Yes.
I've never thought about it before. And I'm like, okay, so
Mhm.
now we know what you're doing that we can kind of change. And so, a lot of the work with the breech stuff is for patients to do on their own.
Yeah.
And then I'll just, do the gentle Webster technique, other soft tissue stuff, and, obviously mindset and mantra and visualization and all of those things are parts of that. But, I find that with breech, it's like, if you're in the hospital system, it's like ECV or C-section are your choices, and people kind of feel backed into a corner.
Sure.
But there are so many things. There are so many things to do. And that's what I love to tell my breech patients. It's like, you have plenty of time, right? Like you have time, even though it might only, yes, 2 weeks feels like impending doom, but we have time. We have time. And then also there are so many tools. And sometimes, I have to maybe break up the conversation a little bit between appointments to say like, I have a laundry list of things for you to utilize, and I don't want to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
So, if we need to slow down, if you want more, please say, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. But yeah, I don't know. I think breech is, it's just really cool to be an outlet or a resource for those people.
I mean, truly though, some of the things that you're telling me, too little too late, but like, I just think, oh man, if only I'd have known this or that or this, that. Neither of my daughter was breached for like a minute and a half.
Right.
It was nothing, but just, I ended up having to have a C-section with the first one. And I wonder if my not excessive, but I worked out up until the Fridays before I gave birth to both of them. And I do wonder if maybe I had these conversations with people, if I might have, been able to stretch things or recognize. The word intention is screaming in the back of my ear when you're talking about like leaning a certain way to make your coffee, getting into your chair a certain way. Like we do these repetitive things and we're not aware that we're doing them because we do them without intention, because it's not something that you would recognize. Like the way I sit in my chair could possibly impact my pregnancy and whatever. And then of course, for people who are not pregnant, can impact other things as well. And so, yeah, it's like having somebody to kind of help point out things like, if you can do this, you can try this, this can help that. Being intentional about that can help you to get to a different space than perhaps you might have been. And it's really lovely to know that kind of conversation can exist in the world.
Totally. And how I describe it is like, the way we operate in our lives is multitasking to the max, right? Like we're doing 4 or 5 things at a time up here.
Yes.
And the way that our brain manages that is by deprioritizing bodily functions, right? Like our body, like our brain finds our body's needs really annoying when we're trying to do, higher cognitive task. And so during pregnancy, you really have to practice bumping up your body's asks and needs up the priority list to like key in on it, because we just don't because we don't live our lives that way. That's not how we get our stuff done. And so it's like, it's a little humbling to have to think like, how am I getting out of bed in the morning?
Yes.
to pay
It's
and to
healing.
pay to pay attention to our bodies is like not, it's not, I mean, we just don't do it.
You know, it's like the body is just the vessel that gets my brain around, and what I'm focusing is on the things that I have to get done and what I have to do and the tasks that I have to accomplish. And it's so it is. And I work with people who are in an aging population a lot with one of the programs that I worked through, and I have this conversation a lot where they talk about like, if only I'd have paid more attention to my body, or if only I'd had whatever it might look like. And yeah, and you know, so that made me think about, you mentioned getting out of bed. I have gone to a stretch gym. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
yeah. That literally its only purpose is stretching people, which if I could have somebody do that to me for like an hour a day, I would be living my best life. I'm so lazy about stretching. But you mentioned getting out of bed. When you get done stretching, they have you do like boxing gloves, and they like pull you, and then they like swing you around and sit you up. And I was like, you need to tell every person who is related to some pregnant person how to do this. Because if I only knew, I'd have made my husband do that to me almost every single time I got out of bed. Like, just come get me, come get me up. Because it's even just the small things like getting out of bed that we can do with intention, or asking for help and saying like, I'm carrying a bowling ball in my uterus. Could you maybe come give me an assist? But he didn't know to do that. I certainly didn't know to ask. So it is,
Um,
it's the education that you're providing people that is so helpful, of like being intentional about focusing on our body. That is so unique and special.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And education, I find that like I talk a lot. I love talking.
Yes. Yeah.
And in my appointments are 30 minutes, and so we have time.
Yes.
And that the education piece, the talking about like what's happening here, this that you're telling me hurts is connected to these things. So what are we doing here that could be contributing? And now obviously like the pain point, or the place that is in pain, is usually a victim, right? Like it's the place that is crying out for help, but it's not always the root cause. So we don't, I mean,
Yes.
I don't just chase pain, but like,
Yes.
where can we trace it back?
Yes.
So many of my patients say, getting out of bed it's the worst. It's so hard. And so, we do a lot of problem solving in the office.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, lay on the table and show me what you're doing.
Yes.
And then let's like try a couple different ways. Let's see if like this is gonna work. Or maybe you need to switch places with your husband for the next few weeks to make this other side that doesn't hurt do a little work, or what, whatever. So
my husband and I actually did switch sides after my C-section, because I could not lie. I think I couldn't lie on my right side, and I was on the right side, so I couldn't roll over and like tend to my son in the bassinet. So we literally had to switch sides of the bed, because in my recovery I could not lie on my right side. So yeah, I mean, it is some of those things of like making those intentional choices of like, this could be something that's more helpful for you in your recovery.
Yeah. And just like troubleshooting and brainstorming, and like I want to make it tangible for them. I don't want to give them something that they're never gonna like, that's not helpful. And so, the education piece, like just I have these pictures on my walls of like the pelvis with the ligaments on it, and a pregnant belly with a baby head down with a spine kind of close to it, that like it's super realistic. And I use them all the time, because I'm like, people, unless you're in the medical field, like taking anatomy and physiology is not a requirement.
No.
And so, like saying to people, this muscle is attached here, and your brain thinks that your pelvis is like falling apart because of all this relaxin. And so, yeah, the muscle on the inside of your leg is directly attached right up there. And so your body's locking that muscle down. That's why it hurts so bad. It's because your brain's reaction to instability is to like lock it down. And
Right.
so, you can train your brain to let go a little bit by using some other stabilizers. So when you get up, you need to squeeze your glutes. When you sit down, you need to squeeze your glutes. When you bend over to pick up the laundry basket, you need to hip hinge like a deadlift. And I teach them how to do a deadlift and train your brain that like this teeny tiny adductor muscle is not the only one you have. It's just the closest one to the situation where your
Yes.
body perceives instability. So it's, and it's things like conversations like that where patients like, it's really instantaneous where they're like, oh, I just did that thing that has been hurting me for a long time and it didn't hurt. And I'm like, great, that's awesome.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. It's like magic, but not. It's science.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's anatomy. Yeah.
Anatomy, yet you're right. We do not require, I don't think I've ever taken an anatomy and physiology course specifically. So yeah, you're right. I don't think it's a requirement. Well,
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing all this information. It's so useful. It's so helpful for people to just take a step back, whether or not you have any interest in having a baby, just your body in general, and thinking about like kind of doing a body scan and thinking like, do I have places of discomfort, consistent discomfort in my body? What is it? What is my body trying to tell me? Maybe I am getting out of bed in a weird way, even though I don't have a uterus and have no interest in being pregnant, but I need to get out of bed differently or use my muscles differently when and so that is such good information for people to have. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to share your intellectual labor with the team.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
I mean, I go on and I mean, we could talk for hours and hours. And it's like, my hope for doing this podcast and with all the interactions with my patients is for them to be empowered in their own body, right? For people
Yes.
to listen to this show and be like, oh, I never thought about my body that way, or I can manage this on my own. I mean, I think body work, whatever kind you choose, massage, acupuncture, Mayan abdominal massage, pick your flavor, is important to do on a regular basis, just like you see the dentist, just like you see the eye doctor, just like you check in with your GP. And so, and I think what that does is just like, it just touches people back to their body. Right. And so, yeah, that's the goal.
Yes. Amazing. So Dr. Vawter, where can everybody find you? I will obviously put it in the show notes, but for everyone listening as well.
Yes. Well, like you said earlier, my office is in Overland Park. I'm at Shawnee Mission Parkway in Metcalf for people that are in the Kansas City area. My website is drlisavawter.com, DRLISAV as in Victor, AWTER.com. And then on Instagram at Lisa Vawter Chiro. So yeah, that's the best place. If you listen to this podcast and you're inspired, there's a link on my website to schedule. I just have online scheduling, so you can pick a time that works and book it yourself. And yeah, that's me. That's me on the internet and in real life.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. I will probably ask you to come back because I do feel like we could have gone at least another 60 minutes, but it wouldn't take too much of your time today. And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in yet another week. Be curious, not judgmental, and make it a good one. See y'all.